Once upon a time, there was a little girl named Yuli, and she is going to tell you the story of how she became a witch. This is her final story, and it all started when she was 7 years old. Yuli was a little girl who lost her family in a fire at a very young age. She was left all alone. But she could not survive on her own, so she went to live with her aunt, Isako, who lived in a neighboring village. One morning her aunt woke her up from her sleep and told her to get up. "We are going on a very long journey to a neighboring village," she said. Yuli naively believed her aunt and went with her. They crossed 7 rivers before they reached the forest and took a path through the forest. They walked for 3 hours. They came under a very big old tree. A very old woman was sitting under the tree. She looked very disheveled, and her body was aggressively red. The aunt said to the old woman, "That's her. I brought her to you." The old woman asked Aunt Isako, "Are you sure I should go on? Are you sure she will survive?" The aunt replied, "Yes, it is necessary. I am sure she will survive." The old woman gave Yuli a black liquid from a wooden cup to drink. Yuli refused, but the sorceress insisted. Yuli drank, and after drinking she fainted. When she woke up, she found herself in bed in her aunt's house. She didn't know how she got back. Poor Yuli was so small. After that day, Yuli started to feel strange. She could see things she had never seen before. She had the power to summon strange spirits, and often strange beings looked at her. Yuli was scared and distressed, worried. She went to tell her aunt about the strange beings she had seen. "Aunt Isako, I saw a strange being in the room looking at me. They scare me a lot. They always come for me. I hate seeing them. They are so ugly and they scare me. Please, I don't want to see them anymore. Please help me," she begged. "Don't worry, Yuli. You will soon get used to it and you will love your new powers," her aunt said. Poor little Yuli believed that her aunt was the most powerful herbalist in the whole village. Married women would come to Yuli's aunt's house for magical help to take revenge on their husband's mistress, or to teach criminals a lesson. Yuli's aunt only helped women whose marriages were in trouble or whose lives were in danger. She never used her magic in the service of evil forces. She only used it for the small affairs of the village women. And she forever refused to help anyone who wanted to take away her powers. Yuli started to learn some magic from her aunt. She followed her aunt into the mountains and collected special herbs used to perform magical rituals on women who chose to terminate unwanted pregnancies. Yuli learned all this from her aunt for many years, and after 12 years with her aunt, she grew into a beautiful woman ready for marriage. Yuli met a young man, and a relationship started between them. But 3 months into the relationship, Ike started to notice something strange about Yuli. He saw that Yuli sometimes didn't look at anyone and sometimes talked to herself. And Yuli's condition made Ike very uncomfortable, and he started looking for excuses to end his relationship with her. Unfortunately, Yuli got pregnant by Ike. Yuli was afraid that her aunt might kick her out of the house for disappointing her. She spoke to Ike and told him about her pregnancy, but Ike, looking for a way to end the relationship, rejected the baby. Yuli was heartbroken and devastated. She was confused and didn't know what to do. Yuli finally told her aunt. Her aunt was very upset and angry with Yuli, but she took Yuli to Ike's house and asked him why he refused to accept the pregnancy. Ike said to her aunt, "She is lying to you. I am not responsible for this situation, and she knows it. She is lying to me. She made it all up." So that was the end of our relationship. Yuli was very angry with Ike. She was very unhappy that he had humiliated her in front of her aunt and in front of the community. She decided to take revenge on Ike and vowed to destroy Ike. Yuli said to herself that the gods betrayed me in front of my aunt. Ike called me a liar for something he knew to be true. I will deal with Ike. The battle line has been drawn. He has asked for war, and he will get war from me. I will go to the mountains. Yuli prepared the worst nightmare for Ike. She went up the mountain to gather some herbs and prepare for her revenge. But something was missing for this revenge mission. To successfully destroy Ike, she needed a blood sample from family members or directly from him. But it was impossible to retrieve it because it was too far away. The child in her womb was her only direct link to Ike. So she decided to terminate the pregnancy and use his blood to destroy Ike and end his life. She mixed some herbs and drank it. She was able to successfully terminate the pregnancy. Finally, she had enough blood to cast a spell. She held the blood ball under the full moon and began to cast a spell on it. She destroyed Ike's work and infected him with a deadly disease. The spell worked, and after a few weeks Ike started to get sick, became very weak and died days later. Yuli was so happy to get her revenge. She danced and celebrated her victory. When her aunt heard what Yuli had done, she was very angry with Yuli for doing such a bad thing to her unborn child and the child's father. She angrily kicked Yuli out of her house, and Yuli had nowhere to go or live. She settled in a small hut near the village mountain. One day 2 years later, Yuli met a very rich farmer named Kofi on her way up the mountain to collect food. Kofi fell in love with Yuli and married her. Yuli entered Kofi's heart, and they began to live as husband and wife. But after 2 months, Kofi noticed Yuli's strange behavior and realized that he heard her talking and laughing to herself and often doing strange things. Kofi confronted her and asked her why she was acting so strangely. Yuli answered him and told him, "Why are you surprised? This is the way of my life. I have been this way since I was 7 years old, and this is my normal way of life." This scared and frustrated Kofi a lot. As the days went by, Kofi started to notice some bad luck and his business declined. He was no longer making sales and profits like he used to, and things started to get worse and worse for Kofi. He sat at the door of his hut and thought to himself what kind of woman he had married. "I've brought trouble on myself. I wonder if I married a ghost. Things have gone really bad for me since I married her," he said. Kofi continued to think. All the time she has this strange and abnormal behavior. No, I can't take it. I have to get her out of my house as soon as possible. I can't let her continue to live under my roof before things get worse. Kofi sent Yuli away from home. Yuli left, and within 2 years she married for different men, but they all ended their marriages with her. Yuli was alone now. She was ostracized and everyone was afraid of her. She left the village and started living in a small hut outside the village. She only went out at night to gather food and look for water. One night she was walking in the forest when she met a group of strange men dressed in black robes. These men approached Yuli, and one of them told her that "We have been waiting for you. We know your powers and we want you to join us." Yuli was hesitant at first, but the men were convincing. They promised her that she would no longer be alone and that she would eventually find herself. Yuli agreed to go with the men, and they took her deep into the forest. They came to a clearing in the middle of the forest, and there was a big black stone. The men gathered around the stone and started chanting. Yuli felt a strange power. She closed her eyes, and when she opened them again, she was no longer in the forest but in a strange dark place. The air was thick and smelled of incense. A man emerged from the shadows, tall and handsome, with black hair and piercing red eyes. "Welcome, I've been waiting for you," he said. Yuli was scared and asked who he was. "I am the leader of this coven. We are a group of people with extraordinary powers. We are called the Children of the Night. You asked me why you brought me here. Because we need you. You are one of us. You are one of the children of the night. Yuli hesitated for a moment and then nodded and said, yes, I will join you. Yuli was accepted and joined the children of the night. She was given an assignment to fetch spirits and immediately set to work. She cast a spell on every man she came across, making them fall in love with her. When the male takes her home, she transforms into a large snake and bites them, releasing a dangerous poison into his body and leaving them to die as she moves on to the next victim. The young girl was preparing to cast a spell when she was suddenly startled by a deep voice behind her. She turned to see a wise old healer. The priest recognized the darkness and anger in her eyes and rebuked her harshly. Don't follow evil spirits, he shouted. Use your power for good. The priest sprinkled blessed oil on the girl, and at that moment something miraculous happened. The girl's body curled and twisted, eventually turning into a gigantic snake. The snake hissed angrily and prepared to attack the priest. But the priest remained calm and began to recite powerful prayers. The power of the prayers moved the serpent, and her anger subsided. Gradually, the snake disappeared and the young girl took its place again. The girl knelt before the priest in amazement and gratitude. The priest smiled at her and said, "You are now free from your evil powers. From now on, I will guide you and teach you to be a real human being." Under the guidance of the priest, the girl learned the path of goodness and love. She learned to avoid evil spells and to use her power to help others. In time, she left behind the darkness of her past and lived a happy and fulfilling life.